and welcome to Scilence, a podcast that gives women in science, technology, engineering and maths, or STEM, an opportunity to share honestly and openly about what it's really like working in these typically male-dominated subjects. Each week, one woman shares her stories and experiences. She could be a public figure, the girl next door, or someone from a far-off land. The point is she'll be deliberately kept anonymous and disguised to ensure that we're not distracted by the details of her achievements, her labels, or what she looks like. I'm Dr. Shanice O'Mara, also a woman in STEM. I studied mechanical engineering and ended up as a television broadcaster. I've worked on and reported on some cutting-edge technology and innovation over the years, and through my television work, I've met some incredible women from a diverse range of STEM fields. And you know what? I've been more amazed about what I've learned from these women when the cameras have been turned off and they're just being themselves. These women have amazingly impressive CVs, but most importantly, they're human, just like the rest of us. And it's that off-air honesty that I'd love to share with you through Scilence. This week, my guest is in the field of neuroscience. Hi.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
When I first told you about it being anonymous, what were your feelings towards that?
I agree with your reasons for making it anonymous because yes, it's true that sometimes when you have a camera in front of you, or when your title and your achievements are going along with your story, you're more careful about what you say. So I totally agree with your reason for making it anonymous.
Yeah, that was actually an inspiration for the show because I have had such incredible conversations, like really inspiring, uplifting and supportive conversations with women in STEM. But the minute you want to record it, they kind of clam up and get very self-conscious.
Yes, that's true.
So tell me how it all began for you as a neuroscientist. Was it obvious from an early age that you would end up studying that subject?
Absolutely not, actually. When I was younger, all I wanted to do was be like my eldest brother because he was so tall and he was a medical doctor, and I just wanted to do everything he did. So at school, I did the normal subjects. So my background, actually, my secondary school education started in Nigeria, in Africa, and I excelled in all of the subjects. But when it came to deciding a particular focus, the trend was that if you're good at science, you became a science student, and that's how I ended up, becoming a science student. And also, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the rigor of it. I enjoyed the calculations. I enjoyed understanding how the world works or why things happen the way they do. So I thrived as a science student, and along the line, I carried on. I moved to the UK, came here to do my A-levels in physics, chemistry, and biology. And it was during that time I decided to actually apply to study medicine, and I got a place actually for to get on the course, but I actually missed the grade. So I was offered other options if I wanted to. So I ended up studying pharmacology at university, and it was during those 3 years I had time to really think about whether medicine actually was for me. And I decided that it wasn't because I really enjoyed the research side of things. I fell in love with working in the lab and understanding really how the brain works. And that was because of a module in my final year. It was a neuroscience module, and I just really enjoyed understanding the mechanisms around pain, or understanding different diseases, especially how the brain sometimes fails to work. And that was really the beginning of my fascination with the brain. And I was fortunate enough to get a placement during the summer between my second and third year to work in the lab with an amazing scientist who was focused on Alzheimer's disease research. And that was, for me, the hook, and I couldn't let it go. So I was really, really excited about the opportunity to pursue a PhD in neuroscience, and I sent out several applications to different universities, and I was opportune to get a scholarship to do that in London.
Wow, what a journey. When you were young and you were starting out in your STEM journey, which obviously was extensive. Were you naturally gifted in the sciences?
I would say I was, only because I studied hard and I really enjoyed it. And for me, if I focus on something, I understand it, then I'm excited about it. And in that sense, yes, I was. So a lot of my early stems, understanding wasn't actually practical. It was a lot of just reading to understand, and then just accepting that this is how things worked. But when I moved to the UK and I actually had practical lessons, that was when my eyes really were broadened, and I was really intrigued about how you can go from chemistry, how you can actually do experiments in the lab and actually see the results right there in front of you, because obviously we had more facilities in the UK. So that was the hook. Really, I really enjoyed it, and as you can imagine, as a child, if you excel at something, then you become more excited to do more of it. So yeah.
So was there ever a time where you were conscious that you're female in a typically male dominated area?
To be honest, that did not occur to me. I just saw it. I just saw studying a science subject as something I was good at, and it wasn't until much later, probably after I'd finished my PhD, I realized that okay, this is, and also actually when I looked at the careers of more senior people in my department, and then I saw that there weren't that many women. But in my day-to-day work in the lab, I was actually surrounded by more women than men. I know it's not typical of most STEM departments and around the world, but in my situation, we had more women, more women with kids, more women who were married, and quite few men. So yes, it was later on I realized that that was an unusual situation. But the one thing I did notice was that there weren't as many African scientists as I would have liked within my department. I was usually the only ethnic student around, and I just thought, okay, this is interesting, but keep moving on. And it was later on that I realized that okay, had I seen more African scientists, perhaps I would have been encouraged to stay longer in science.
Yeah, often conversations on silence end up kind of around the subject of being in a minority, whether that's being female or from a certain part of the world. Why do you think we need to be surrounded by people who are similar to us? Why do you think it's important?
I think as humans, one of the basic things we crave is belonging. And that starts from seeing people that look like you and seeing that it's possible, seeing that it can be done. It can be done, and seeing that your color or your race or your ethnicity doesn't really play a part. And for the most part, I actually believe that. I believed that, during my time as a PhD student, where I knew that I was being judged by the quality of my work, and because as you know, science is quite a multicultural discipline, and it reflected that. My environment reflected that. We had people from all over the world, but at the core of who we are, independent of how our work is being judged, based by the quality, the research, our findings, our discoveries, we want belonging. And I think one of the things I would have loved to see would have been more people of different ethnicities who could support each other, because at the end of the day, there's something that gets lost in translation somehow when, I don't know, beyond the science, you have different races or different genders or something. There is just something. There's something to be said for belonging. There's something to be said for seeing people that look like you doing what you want to do. So I think, I'm all for encouraging young people from diverse backgrounds to pursue science, but ultimately they really have to enjoy it, because it's one thing to enjoy it and it's another thing to feel like you belong and you see people like you. I think it makes for an amazing environment if you have those two things working for you.
Were there any times in your STEM career where you were not enjoying what you were doing?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I remember very clearly my first year in my PhD. I was actually going to quit my PhD because I felt it wasn't going as quickly as I thought it should have. I had to wait for quite a few committees to meet up to be able to approve my samples because I use human brain samples, and I had to go through several stages of approval before and as you can imagine, that's essential to get consent and to understand why I needed the samples and to make sure that it's what we really did need the samples for my research. So that was quite frustrating for me because I'm a person who likes to work quickly. I'm driven by achievements based on timelines. And yes, I literally was going to quit my PhD because I thought this isn't going as quickly as I would have liked. So I had a period of 9 months where I was doing basic science, but I was quite lucky that I had the right people around me who advised me to make the most of that time. So I ended up just attending seminars. I ended up going to lots of trainings and reading up on literature, so building my background awareness of the field and just making sure I really knew what I was getting myself into before my samples were approved. So yes, definitely there were periods where I didn't enjoy it, but then as soon as my samples were approved, it was non-stop until the end, and that was when the fire was back in me, and I really enjoyed working in the lab and finding out why the brain sometimes doesn't work as I did in my research.
Has there always been something you're striving for in particular? Like it might be, I don't know, self evolution. I don't know. Like, what's been your purpose?
Um, from an early age, I just knew that I wanted to do well. Actually, I remember a moment when I was probably 11 or 12 in class, and a teacher asked the question, and a girl raised up her hand and she answered it. And I was like, okay, that's good. I didn't know the answer to that question. But then I went on that day and I read the notes that we were given the week before. And I was like, this is easy. She literally just read the notes and she was able to answer that question. And I remember very clearly that, okay, if you want to be able to excel at school, I just had to do the work. And from then on, I made sure I studied. I think I remember that very clearly. I just made sure I studied. I knew I wanted to be, I wanted to be knowledgeable. I have a quest for learning. I love learning up to today. I feel like learning is like breathing to me. Yeah, so I just always wanted to learn. I always wanted to know things. I always, even outside of science, I love reading about people, about their stories, about their journeys. I am just a student of the world, really. So I think learning is key for me. Learning is at the core of everything I do. Just wanting to know, wanting to understand. And as I've progressed in my career, really looking for wisdom.
Wow. And you mentioned your brother as being an inspiration. Who else were your role models?
Growing up, actually, my brother was my only role model, my eldest brother. So he's a medical doctor. And I just literally wanted to be like him growing up until I, got to university, actually, because I wasn't really surrounded by. So I come from a family where my dad was a teacher, my mom, worked in the medical field as well. So it was quite an academic family. And I remember my mom used to tell me growing up, your book is your best friend. So I was really encouraged to study and to learn. I remember having encyclopedias growing up and just reading about them and looking at pictures of, random animals and understanding where they live and why they live there. So learning has always been encouraged in my home. So I would say really my mom and my brother, and to a large extent my dad, have been my role models because they really just put that spark in me to want to learn, to want to be aware. and also to believe that if I do the work, I will succeed. So yeah, yeah. My dad, my mom, for different reasons. So my dad he had two rules at home: are you studying and are you going to church? Those are his only two rules. Outside of that, you can do anything else you want. And for my brother, really, it was just because he was there. He was the only one person I looked up to in terms of careers, and that was it really. And then when I whilst I was doing my PhD, I started to research about what scientists did in and outside of the lab, and then I started to find new role models in terms of in life as well.
And how did you select those more current role models? As in, clearly, since you've grown up, we tend to choose different role models based on what we want out of life.
Yes.
So, how have your role models changed and why are they role models for you today?
My role models today are people who have actually just gone after what their dreams are, and people especially who have achieved remarkable feats, regardless of the ethnicity or background or obstacles. So I'd actually say, whilst I was a science student during my PhD now, I didn't really have role models per se. I had peers who were mentors. I had peers who helped me, who encouraged me, who I could go to talk to about my problems as I was, working in the lab. But it was when I finished actually my PhD that I actually realized that yes, I do need um, mentors. So I use the word mentors and role models interchangeably. And actually, a lot of them who have worked with me in the past few years, I didn't actually choose them. They chose me. And I'm so grateful because they took the time out to be a sounding board for me. The only one person I actually approached to be a mentor was a lady who is a magistrate and also a vicar. And I looked at her. I thought, okay, this is an accomplished woman. This is a woman who is confident, who is successful. And I thought, I'm quite lost at this point in my career, and I just said to her, I really need some guidance, and she took me under her wing. So that was the one person I approached to be a mentor for me, and through that one person, I actually found others who took time to show me the ropes and to guide me, to be there for me when I had questions. So I would say people who were selfless, people who had accomplished great feats in their own careers and who were willing to give back. So I was quite fortunate to meet these people. And yes, I'm eternally grateful to them.
And do you think there are enough women around to be role models or mentors for other girls and women who are going along a STEM path?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are. But the problem is that I feel, in my opinion and in my short experience, I feel that sometimes the younger women have in their mind they have this fear in terms of approaching the more experienced women. And the more experienced women are quite busy themselves that they might not actually have the time or that mental gap to actually look around to say, who can I support here? Because you have to be careful, sometimes you don't want to overstep your boundary, you don't want to offer help to somebody who doesn't need help or who doesn't feel like they need help. So I feel there needs to be a meeting ground sometimes between the people who are looking for knowledge and the people who want to give the knowledge. But I absolutely believe, and also in my experience, a lot of my mentors are women. But I had to approach them sometimes first to ask for that help. There's no point giving help to somebody if they don't think they need it. So I think the first step sometimes needs to come from the younger person who is seeking the support and encouragement from an older, experienced person that they admire and they aspire to be, or whose career inspires them. But I absolutely, definitely believe there are enough mentors around. You just have to go looking for them.
Do you think there's a difference between different STEM subjects in terms of gender equality? Because I've talked to, say, mechanical engineers or planetary scientists who really cannot find women in their field. And often they are representing the female population in their subjects. Do you think that circumstance exists in neuroscience?
I can only speak from my own experience, but I agree that in some other fields there might be that challenge, especially for in neuroscience or in science or science in general. I saw, and I can tell you that there are lots of women. Obviously, not a lot of them are in high executive or senior positions, but there are women there. For for subjects like engineering and maths, I yeah, definitely I can imagine that there might be a shortage of women available. But sometimes it takes you going beyond probably your university or your institution, or sometimes across the world, across the pond to other countries to actually get that support you need. Um, I know that there are some schemes who actually encourage engineering women, or who profile women in engineering or women in mathematics, and women who are astronauts, for example. They're few and far between, but I still believe that if you reach out to people, you should be able, you're likely to find um, mentors or role models. And failing that, actually, there are lots of men who support women as well. There are lots of men who who are aware that there's an issue in terms of gender equality in STEM areas, and they're quite willing to support the younger generation of women as well. So I've been able to benefit from a few men mentors myself. So there are people out there, regardless of their gender, who are willing to help. So I wouldn't let that stop me if I were a young person in engineering or maths or science today. Whether I had a female mentor or a male mentor, the point is I would go after the knowledge wherever it is.
Do you ever think that maybe girls are afraid to approach people for help because it might be a sign of weakness, or they may get rejected in some way? Do you think that's a thing that exists?
Absolutely, I agree. Because I myself, it took a long time for me to get to the point where I could ask for help, beyond my comfort zone. It took me some time, and I believe it actually takes girls longer than it should, compared to our male peers. Um, and the one thing I'll say to that is, I remember one of my mentors actually telling me this, that young girls need to find that confidence from somewhere. Whether it's a father or a brother or an uncle or a male, role model in your life to instill that confidence in you, because we do sell ourselves short compared to our male peers. And yes, that fear of rejection is at the forefront of our minds. And sometimes, even when we're good enough, we doubt ourselves. So we need to just say, so what, and just go after what we really need. Yes, the fear of rejection is there. It really, I don't know if it goes away. No one wants to be rejected. I don't. I certainly don't want to be rejected. But it happens. But if you send out 10 emails, at least one or two of them will respond with a positive response. So I think it's just being aware that these things happen, and that you just need to take your chance. And as time goes on, you start to develop that thick skin, and the right people who are for you will respond positively to what you need. So it's about not giving up in reaching out to people, and just believing that the right person will support you.
Yeah, it seems like time and time again when I am recording for Scilence, the issue of confidence and self belief and self doubt seems to be very significant amongst women and less of an issue amongst men. And I wonder, first of all, if that's even true. But if it is true, why do women struggle more with this than men?
That's a very good question.
Yeah, I honestly just I'm baffled by it. I mean, if it is the case, and I'm sure there's probably research on it, how can we bypass it as women? Is it simply a case of just pushing past it? How can we deal with it?
I think, we all at some point will go through that. At some point in your career, you'd ask yourself, am I good enough? Do I deserve to be here? How did I get here? I was actually speaking to a friend a couple of days ago, and we talked about imposter syndrome and how when we were doing our PhDs, we were always thinking, oh my God, I hope I don't get found out. Do I deserve to be here? Did they make a mistake? And for me, I realized after some time that I had a panel of about 12 people interview me for my PhD studentship, and 12 people cannot be wrong. I had to accept that, you deserve to be here as much as everybody else. Get your head down, focus and do the work, and let your work speak for itself. But then again, I think it's maybe it's our upbringing, maybe it's our background, maybe it's the cultural aspect of it as well. It could be so many factors, but at some point you have to just take a hold of your life and just be responsible for it. That might take longer for others. That might take a longer time for some than others. But I feel like everyone goes through that at some point. Everybody will doubt themselves. Or I think it's probably sometimes it's good, because if you think you're actually, if you're arrogant about actually I deserve to be here, I'm God's gift to science, then actually maybe there's something wrong there. Sometimes it's healthy, but I think we have to overcome that. And I think, being aware that you deserve, to be where you are, or seeing that there are other people who have gone ahead of you, other people who have validated you, and holding on to those moments would maybe help younger girls. I don't know.
Yeah, it does seem, I mean, imposter syndrome comes up a lot as well. And the responsibility of dealing with that does lie with us. It's important to climb out of that. But another thing that comes up is the importance of a good support network.
Absolutely.
How important has that been for you?
Oh, it's everything. It's everything. I always tell my friends, and I make a note to make sure I thank them from time to time, and my family, for their support, because I always say to them, oh, you guys are congratulating me on all these things, but if it wasn't for you, I probably wouldn't have the confidence to go out into the real world and achieve everything I'm doing. Because I think, like I said earlier, at the core of who we are, we want belonging, and we want to have people around us who encourage us, who validate us. Now, if you don't have that, I think your outlook on life might be more aggressive than it should be. Um, because I know personally from my experience that just having the support of my friends, especially when I face obstacles, telling me just keep going, things will happen. Don't worry about the situation now. Just keep going, put in the hours, put in the work. It's possible. I think that always, without fail, takes me out of a rut when I get down sometimes, and encourages me to just keep going. And then I realize actually they are right. Actually, things are going well now. So I think it's invaluable really to have an amazing support network, and investing in those networks actually is what comes back to you. Finding time to spend with family and friends, creating new friendships. Being being comfortable with leaving your comfort zone sometimes. But yeah, I think it's essential that you have a good support network. supporting you and cheering you on.
Yeah, I don't know whether you've ever experienced this, but coming from an ethnic minority, sometimes education is really a way of commanding respect,
Yeah.
being seen as valid, or put another way, you can earn respect through education.
Yeah.
Um, and so sometimes family uh, are really aware of how significant education can be. So sometimes, um, in my case, I feel like my parents were very much pushing me to get the best education I could get. And so often being pushed came from home, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah.
Did you ever experience that kind of pressure?
Not really, The only pressure I experienced was when I was at secondary school and even A levels and university. The bottom line in my family was you should do the best you can do. Make sure you put in the effort. Make sure you achieve the best as much as you can. But no one really. So I understood that bottom line, and I wanted that for myself as well. Like you said, yes, as an ethnic minority, education is paramount. And coming from Nigeria, if you if you have any Nigerian friends, our parents actually drummed that into our heads because the economic situation in Nigeria is such that even if you're a graduate, sometimes it's challenging to secure a successful to achieve a successful career. So imagine if you didn't have that, so where would you be? Where do you start from? So that was the bottom line for me, and I was aware of that too. But the thing is, I actually wanted success for myself as well. But whether I did a PhD or not, no one told me, "Do you want to do a PhD?" No, I actually just said, "Okay, I am actually sure that medicine is not for me." I knew that I didn't want to be in a hospital, like, I don't know, for long hours. I didn't, and obviously, I haven't seen my brother when I was much older, and knowing his work schedule and the commitments he had to give into his career and the constant exams, I was like, okay, this is not for me. So I had to actually find my own way. I was actually in control. And even when I decided that I was going to quit my PhD, I told my mom, and she was like, okay, whatever you decide, we support you. So I've actually been lucky in that I've been in the driving seat of my career most of the time, and I'm very fortunate that my family support me in whatever I decide to do. I know it's not the norm, and I know that a lot of people feel the pressure to actually follow the advice their parents give them. But I've just been fortunate that mine have let me explore the world as I see fit, and when I change direction, they're still there supporting me.
Mm. And do you feel that given STEM subjects do require a certain way of using your brain, do you think women in STEM tend to push themselves to extremes?
Women in STEM in particular.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know whether it's fair to really generalize in this way, but STEM subjects can be really hard. I mean,
Absolutely.
when you think about the way we learn maths, I mean, mathematics is just so binary sometimes. And so I wonder whether women in STEM tend to push themselves extra hard.
I think there's a fair point there because again, it's probably back to the confidence thing that you're trying to prove yourself. So if you want to show that I know what I'm doing, I can excel at this, then yes, absolutely, it's possible that some women might push themselves to actually achieve remarkable things. Yeah, but I think if you really want it for yourself, then you push yourself. I think we all have different goals, right? And sometimes you find that women just decide that, what, this is not, this race is not for me. I want to have a family. I don't want to work as long in the lab. I want to work 3 days a week so that I can spend time with my kids. And then, they make that choice later on, but at the point where you're still at the early stages, absolutely we tend to push ourselves to do, to go above and beyond.
So you mentioned earlier that women do not tend to occupy the more senior positions.
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
If I were to guess, it would be to have a more rounded life or lifestyle. So probably to spend, obviously taking time, if they decide to have children, to take time away to have those children. And then by the time they're back in the game, probably after a year or two, they have to kind of make up for lost time. Um, yeah, so it's probably that. And also a lot of the responsibility of keeping a home together usually falls on the woman. And I've found that women now, especially in this time, are actually waiting longer to have kids, to start a family, um, because they were starting to put our careers first now, because we want to do as much as we can, so that if we were to leave the race tomorrow, by the time we come back, at least we can still keep up with our peers. So I think it's unfair, but this is the role of a woman. We are the ones who have the womb. We're the ones who can birth children. So I think that sometimes puts us at an unfair disadvantage compared to men. Um, so because again, if you leave your career, say maybe 6 7 years going after your PhD, and then you want to come back, you have to kind of catch up first of all with what's happened in the field, and then before you actually are eligible to take a couple of years before you're eligible for a more senior position again. So yeah, I think this is my own theory that probably that's why men are in more senior positions than women in science or in STEM disciplines.
Yeah, I mean, I think that dilemma exists for all women that want to make something of their lives through having a career.
Yeah.
Obviously, you and I can only really talk about it within the STEM arena because that's what we've experienced. But it seems like women these days are in a real dilemma about having it all. What does having it all mean to you? What does it look like?
For me, having it all, I actually, I always say this to myself. I believe I can have it all, but maybe not all at the same time. Um, I believe that there will be seasons in my career where certain things will be at the forefront of my life. So so that could change. Right now it's all my focus is on my career and hopefully starting a family in the future, but that's not my focus yet. But when I do start a family, I'm sure my focus will move to my home, and making sure that my children are well taken care of and they have the best opportunities, and they have actually me to speak to them, because I actually made the decision a while ago, based on my own experience with my parents, because my dad actually was there with me almost every day during my secondary school education, and I would love to replicate that for my own children, because I actually believe that that's one of the reasons why I'm who I am today, that I'm able to think for myself, I'm able to make my own decisions, because I had that amazing parental support. Um, yeah, and also that he did it in such a way that he actually didn't break my spirit, because I feel like it's challenging for parents. I can only imagine, I'm not a parent yet. It's challenging to want to protect your child, to want to instill in them the right values, the right discipline, the right awareness of the world, at the same time making sure that their awe of the world, or their wonder, or their curiosity is not stifled. So for me, definitely I know, because it's actually one of the reasons why I'm grateful that I actually pursued a career in STEM, because what I saw around me whilst I was doing my PhD was that a lot of the women around me actually had children, and they were able to actually combine that with a career. They were able to, arrange to travel as a family to conferences, to make sure that their children were well taken care of. Sometimes they will turn up in the lab at like 9:30, and by 11 they have a call from the nursery that their child is unwell, and they would have to leave, and then find time to catch up on that work. So again, it's not it's an unfair um, level playing field for women who, especially who have children. But I've seen that done, and I've seen some of my mentors do that as well. So for me, I actually believe that it's possible. It's a lot of work, and I'm sure we'll be up for the challenge at the right time.
Yeah, it seems like trying to have it all
Yeah,
requires some kind of planning.
absolutely.
But there's only so much planning that one can do. I mean,
Mm.
meeting someone and, kind of deciding that you want to have a family, and some of that is really up to chance, isn't it? Or are we able to plan that extensively so that we can have it all?
Yes, you're right. Some of it is out of our control, absolutely, and that's why, like I said earlier, for me, for example, right now my focus is okay, my career, and what I want to make sure is a solid foundation, so that by the time I do start a family, because I want to, that shift is that I'm able to actually accommodate that shift based on the work I've done right now. So what I mean is I'm building a career where it's flexible, and I'll be able to, kind of have some flexibility around my schedule, so that I won't feel like I'm missing out on my career because I'm having a child. So for me, yes, that's all I can plan. Everything else is out of my control, and yeah, but that's all I can plan. I can't plan, to the finest detail, but in the bigger scheme of things, as an overview, that's the ideal. That's what I would like. That I've built this career that has flexibility built into it, so that I can actually juggle a holistic life, a good, a well-rounded lifestyle. Because really, having it all, for me, I can sum it up in one word: it's happiness. Being happy in my career, being happy with my family life.
So it sounds as though the way you're approaching it is that you are doing everything you can to set up the circumstances for the future where you can have a family and you can be flexible at work, and you're doing work that is meaningful to you.
Absolutely.
And so you're putting in the effort to set those things up, but whether it actually unfolds that way, you are accepting that that's beyond your control.
Absolutely, but I would say that I'm quite spiritual, so I have a strong faith that that will happen.
Yeah, it feels like, I think certainly the way I think is always kind of in a logical, rational way. And it's kind of like life doesn't really turn out like that. And so as a scientist, sometimes you can feel quite powerless, not being able to control everything to the nth degree. But you sound like you've got a really healthy, great attitude towards it.
Yeah. No, I have to. It's a choice as well. I'm not always, oh, I'm fantastic today, but
Mm.
I read a quote somewhere that positive people are people who are not oblivious of the realities of the world, but they choose to control, or they choose to be self-aware about their emotional state. So it's a choice, it's a choice to decide that regardless of what the situation is right now, I'm not going to be discouraged. I'm going to make sure that you know this doesn't affect me to my core. Yes, I am aware that the world is crazy. There are obstacles around. There are things that won't go according to plan sometimes. But what do you do? What can you do? Is that you pick yourself back up and you try again, and that you don't let that stop you. Because we've heard about so many amazing people who, just because they did not give up, were able to achieve their feat. So for me, it's about not controlling, choosing to have a positive outlook on life, and just believing that everything will work out as it should.
And what is the reality of going into a field like neuroscience?
It's competitive. It's a lot of work, and at the core of it, if you don't enjoy it, you will not succeed in it. You have to really, really like it. You have to really want to do it. You have to be committed to it for the long haul, and you have to be passionate about the topic you're researching. For me, it was about, a lot of my friends have said to me, actually, one of my friends gave me a watch recently and it had an elephant on it. And she said she gave that to me because she knows I never forget anything. And you know what they say, that's an elephant never forgets. And for me, I love that. I love that I can remember memories about my family, about growing up, about with my friends, having great times. And I feel one of the worst things that can happen to a person is actually losing their memory. And that was my biggest interest in going into neuroscience research, where I looked at potential contributing factors to Alzheimer's disease. Why do people lose their memory? What happens? What happens? Does it happen whilst they're babies? Does it happen right when they were being formed in their mother's womb? Why is it that some people all of a sudden just lose that memory? And it's a subject that I'm still passionate about today, because if we can, by a stroke of luck or by a strike of luck, find the reason why, then we can intervene. I know a lot of scientists around the world are working towards that, and it would be amazing to be able to help so many people and their families, find some or just have some hope that it's possible, and people are working towards that.
Gosh, you're clearly so passionate about the subject.
Absolutely.
So what does your future plan look like?
Like I said, science is quite competitive, and you have to love it. You have to be committed to it for the long haul. You have to really be passionate about the topic. You have to be aware of the challenges ahead. And for me, I had to come to a point where I realized that as a person, I'm driven by achievements. I'm driven by achieving milestones. And as you know, science and engineering or STEM disciplines have a pace of their own. You can't really control what happens. And I had to come to a realization that I had to find something else that would incorporate my enthusiasm for learning, my passion to help people, and my commitment to contribute positively to the world. And that's why I actually now I'm more focused on working in the interface between science and industry, where um, we bring people together to collaborate, to support the next generation, to mentor younger people, to let them know what's out there, what's possible beyond a career in science or STEM subjects, and ultimately mentoring in general. That's my focus now. Again, I'm learning. I'm passionate about hearing why people do the things they do, what motivates them, and what they're really looking for, what their purpose is, and what really brings that spark into their eyes. So that's what I'm doing now, really. Working with scientists, working with people from diverse disciplines, and helping inspire the next generation.
Are you happy doing what you do, or do I detect a slight sense of guilt for leaving neuroscience in that sort of academic sense?
Do you know, I'm actually quite happy doing what I do, because again, I had to review my skill set and my personality. So my personality is one that I love talking to people, and being stuck in the lab, at least whilst I was there, did not appeal to me anymore. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to work with people. I wanted to collaborate. I wanted to see what else was out there, quote and unquote. And so, I've been fortunate. Actually, it's not been easy, but I've been fortunate to find a career that I'm just as passionate about, in terms of inspiring the next generation. Although I do miss the lab, you're right. I miss working in the lab. I miss the academic meetings. I miss, being at the forefront of cutting edge science and speaking with some of the brightest minds in the world about research, and seeing that spark in their own eyes as well. So I do miss that, but I'm quite happy with the work I'm doing now, and ultimately impacting the next generation.
Well, I must say it's just so inspiring to really hear the passion in your voice for what you've done in STEM and what you're doing today. Your work sounds so meaningful in kind of encouraging women to stick with their chosen career paths and to seek support
Absolutely.
through speaking with other women. Thank you so much for coming on the show and being so open about your experiences.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Wow, it's so incredible to hear from our STEM guest this week. I just feel like she has really gone through her STEM career with total confidence in her choices. She may not have always had conviction about what she's doing, but she's always had a certainty that she wants to follow her heart. And I think that's really, whether you're in STEM or not, the only thing we can do, even as women or men. Thank you so much for listening this week. Don't forget to subscribe, and catch you next week on Scilence.